Hello, geniuses. Welcome back to the Female Genius podcast. Guys, okay, I think a lot. Okay, I'm gonna do a whole episode about overthinking, by the way, which is the most overthinker thing to think about. But as per usual, guys, I was thinking a lot and I came across TikTok edits. First of all, I love a TikTok edit down. I have a whole folder full of my favorite TikTok edits. And I think if you are an anime fan, if you love comic books, if you love books, it's like world building storytelling in general, edits are just for you. Like they in like a short 30-second dose, they reinvigorate so many memories and feelings that you associate with watching a particular book or series, and you discover so many amazing songs. But in particular, I saw an edit of Love Island season 6 USA. Now, okay, Love Island season 6 USA is the best season of a reality dating show that I have ever consumed in my lifetime. I think it was masterful, okay? And now what made it even more beautiful for me is I experienced, like all Americans, I'm not American, but like all of the Americans out there in the world, I experienced watching it day by day because I mastered the art of legal streaming, and I found it, and I was like seeing so many talks about it on Twitter, like American Twitter. And unfortunately, like in other countries, Love Island seasons only come out in like chop blocks after the season is finished. But I'm hearing all of this conversation. I was like, no, I need to watch it. And the miracle and the beauty it was watching that season. Okay. Now people always laugh at me when I say I'm obsessed with reality dating shows, but I don't think I will ever get closer to, happiness than me and my sister. We will pick a reality TV show, dating show, traitors, whatever, one evening. We'll order food that's probably clogging our arteries, that we'll complain that we will never eat again after we eat it because we're going to be on our diet. And then we sit down and we watch it, and we're pausing every second, we're analyzing, we're debriefing, like, how could he do this to her? We're thinking about how it acts as a microcosm for society as I'm drinking a dirty diet Coke. Like, it's phenomenal. And to me, it feels like art. And it's just the best playground for me to explore some of my opinions and some of my thought processes about romantic relationships in a way in which I don't have to participate. But Love Island season 6, it was amazing. The female friendships that developed on the season, gorgeous. Like, that bond was so beautiful. The ups and downs of the romances, okay, like seeing characters, these are real life people, but seeing people come in and form bonds and those bonds break apart and they naturally run its course, and seeing how that goes, and like seeing like, the dock scene. Guys, when I tell you, if you're going to take anything away from this intro, the dock scene for Love Island season 6, where Serena is talking to Cordell, and then he's like, I'm sorry I hurt you, after Casa Amor. And she's like, it didn't take much. It didn't take shit. Okay, go get your girl. Go on, get her. And she's walking away. And Cordell's like, Serena, come back. And Cordell looks amazing, and Serena looks amazing, and everybody's watching, and we're watching, and the dramatic editors are putting songs in the background. Guys, it was pure cinema. If you're ever gonna go watch something, watch that. And then just their journey. They were like the couple in the, okay, Serena and Cordell were like the couple in the beginning where you thought they were going to break up. Cordell was really into Serena. Serena wasn't really feeling it. She was like, I don't know, I just get friend vibes from him. I don't really get much from him. And then slowly she started warming up to him. She started laughing more around him. She started thinking more around him. Other guys would come in and she'd be like, but Cordell, and then Casa Amor hit, and they kind of got close. And then in Casa Amor, like, Serena was like, no, I genuinely, I think it's Cordell. And she fell. Okay, she fell for him. But then Cordell kind of fucked up in Casa Amor. I partially blame the boys. And then she came back, and Serena was obviously, understandably, absolutely devastated, but like a queen. And Cordell was devastated that he was devastated. And he was like, wait, why the hell would I do that? You know what? It's only been you, Serena. It's only about you. Guys, you need to go watch the scene. But I just think that the reason why it had such a big impact on me, and the reason why I loved it so much, is because I had to watch it unfurl slowly. I couldn't binge watch. You can't, well, you can, but like, the best and the most fulfilling way to watch Love Island is to watch it like the episodes every day, to watch like an episode here, and then a little episode here, and then a little episode here, and then a little episode here. and then to just see it build and unfurl slowly over time. And I think that's what made it so beautiful and so amazing to watch. It allowed space for dialogue. It allowed space for people to talk about what was going on in the show, to think about what was going on in the show. And it made the development of some of those romantic relationships feel authentic and normal and real and rooted in reality, as much as reality dating shows can do that. And it just got me thinking, okay, this is my weird roundabout way to bring us into the topic of this episode, is that I think the way I felt about how watching that Love Island season very slowly rather than binge watching it really impacted and allowed me to take that experience as something beautiful, has allowed me to reflect a little bit on the way we consume art. And by art, I just don't mean a painting. I mean music, I mean movies, I mean stories, all of that kind of thing. And it makes me think about like this binge watching culture and how can we meaningfully consume those things, okay, in a way that it's something that satiates our body, that is like nutritious and filling, and not something that's like junk food that kind of hits the pot and then we quickly move on and like eat more and more and it's never really filling. And so today, in this episode, we're going to have a little discussion about how we can consume and take in stories and art and whether or not there is a better way to do it, whether or not it's a meaningful way to do it.
Female genius.
So first and foremost, I kind of want to start by defining consumerism, mainly the socio-economic ideology behind consumerism, okay? Before I attach and kind of bring it on to talking about it in the context of art, okay? And the socio-economic interpretation of consumerism is, let's say, an ideology that encourages the acquisition of goods and services in ever-increasing amounts, okay? With an implicit core belief that continuously buying and consuming is economically beneficial and is a primary source of personal happiness, fulfillment, and social status. Okay, there are different opinions from all different sides, from a psychological lens to a philosophical lens, from an economist lens to a sociologist lens, on how consumerism has affected our culture, as to also historically how consumerism has developed as well. Like if you were to ask an economist, they would probably praise consumerism, but if you were to ask Greta Thunberg, she would denounce it and say consumerism is a product of the Antichrist. I want to particularly highlight a paper by Richard Easterlin that was written in 1974, and it introduced the idea of something called the Easterlin paradox. And the paper was entitled, "Does Economic Growth Improve the Human Lot?" And in this paper, he provides some evidence and introduces a paradox, the Easterlin paradox, like I said before, where in a country, the richer people tend to be happier than the poorer people. Duh, to some degree, money can buy happiness. But the rising average income in a country over time does not necessarily lead to rising average happiness or satisfaction with life. And so this is intertwined with the idea perpetuated by many philosophers that consumerism shifts from needing things and focusing hard to get, food and shelter and water and all of those kind of things that satisfy life, to wanting things. And we tend to create artificial desires, which can create moral confusion in the individual. In one of the very first episodes I ever did on the podcast, oh my God, that was so long ago, guys, that was over a year ago. Memories. And it was on the episode called when our parents become human. I really want to refilm that episode because I have so many new opinions. But in that episode, I talk about the hierarchy of needs, from the perspective of how that might influence how parents treat and interact with their children, but also the hierarchy of needs and how it changes depending on the context of which the society or community you're studying is coming from. A society, I think there was a study done, I can't remember it just because this was like a year ago when I read these papers, but there was a study done where, like, if you looked at a community post-war, their hierarchy of needs was very, very different to a community 10, 15, like 30 years on from a war, and what they prioritized in society. So when you have a society that is artificially creating wants and desires, their hierarchy of needs changes and perverts. And some philosophers, and probably if you were to go back in time and ask the ancient Greeks and sit them down and describe to them what we have currently going on in society, they might consider this a moral nightmare. But the way in which we interact with goods and physical things, I also think has seeped into the way in which we interact with art and stories. And I want to then move on to music, because I think music is a very accessible example to talk about. But again, I want to emphasize that this is something I think can be applied to books and actual art and stories and films. But I want to talk about it in the context of music because I feel like contextualizing things makes it easy. Beyonce famously said during an interview following the release of her self-titled album, Beyonce, and I quote this, guys, I quote this every 3 months, okay? And you know, people don't make albums anymore. They just try to sell a bunch of quick singles and they don't give their fans a body of work. And this is a sentiment that has been echoed by many, many musicians before Beyonce said it and after Beyonce said it, okay? You know, for example, Adele famously withheld her album 25 from streaming services for 7 months to try and encourage people to buy the art digitally or buy physical albums and copies, saying like she thinks that streaming music is utterly ruining, like not ruining, but it changes the relationship in the which somebody interacts with the music. You know, you're not listening to every song, you're not appreciating every song, like every illustration and note and all of these different things. Okay, and even Rosalia in her phenomenal new album Lux, guys, that album, let me tell you, November 7th, it was November 7th when it came out. It was 11 o'clock, I got a notification on Spotify. Lux has dropped, an hour earlier than I thought. I went down to my living room, closed the door, I had a cup of green tea, decaf, it was 11 p.m. at night, turned off the lights, turned on, you know, a side lamp, not the heavy overhead lights, but a side lamp, okay? And I put my headphones on, my Bose headphones, beautiful sound quality, noise cancellers, Spotify, looseless, phone off, sat there and listened to that masterpiece of an album. And the reason why I did that, okay, is when I was listening to a lot of the interviews that Rosalia was doing before the album was released, she really emphasized her desire for fans to listen and to consume it as a full body of work, to really sit down and listen to it, to not be listening to it as like background music when they're doing other things in their life or they're fiddling with things. She said that I want people to really sit and really listen and make it a moment to really appreciate the aspects of her album. And when I listened to the interview, I was like, you know what, I'm going to intentionally listen to her album that way. Despite the fact, what I thought would be most challenging about listening to her album is she wrote the album in 13 different languages, with the main primary language being Spanish, okay? And mi no hablo español, okay? So I was like, oh my God. And there was no English translation. So I was like, okay, how am I really going to get through this album if I don't understand what she's talking about? But that's the thing that I think is so beautiful about music. And it was like, I sat there, and even though I didn't fully understand what she was saying a lot of the time, I felt what she meant. And the music spoke to me in ways that sometimes language could not. Okay, the little lilts in the notes, the decisions she makes, the timbre, you know, the arrangements with the violins or the orchestral arrangements that she chose, you know, the choice to be really quiet, to go really loud, to be vibrato, like all of those different musical elements I was so focused on, as well as, you know, trying to ascertain, you know, what does this song mean? What could this potentially mean? Oh, I picked up this word. Oh, this part's in English. Oh, okay, this, you know, the concept of the song. And so then after I listened to that album, I then took some time and then went and listened to it with the English translation so I could understand what was going on. And it provided more depth to the album, but the depth was already provided in the first listen. I was already hooked. And I would have never had that experience if I did not create and construct that space that she so intentionally wanted to consume her art that way. And I imagine, like, if I didn't intentionally take that time, I would have missed out on this beautiful universe and masterpiece that Rosalia created. I like, even when you think about shows, so we've done music, we've done books, even when you think about shows, like I've heard people be like, okay, I watched the first episode and it was so boring, like it was just exposition, nobody died, so I stopped watching it. And I'm me on episode 10, I'm like, this is the best story arc. You just gotta stick with it because they have to give you things. You need to see it. So many people watch things while they're on their phone and they wonder why they don't enjoy watching anime anymore. They wonder why they just don't enjoy watching TV, or it doesn't hit, or they don't have the attention span to do it anymore because so many things are occupying our attention. And I guess there is this thing to say and this commentary to say about the interaction between attention span and also consumerism. So is it that we just are always constantly chasing a new thing because we have this artificial want and to consume things that are energetic? Or is it just like our attention span? And our attention span has been so eroded that we constantly need to be stimulated every single second to the point where we cannot follow and have a beat of breath or moment to continue doing it. Not to go back to a music analogy again, is you know, in music, sometimes, or I remember when I used to be part of a band, one of the things that we used to get commentary on, let's say we were practicing for a performance, we were like, harmony here, vibrato here, key change here, violin, guitar, and we were just trying to do everything as much as possible we wanted in 3 minutes of a song. And I remember we had to perform it for our music teachers before we could go on and perform it for whatever. I can't even remember what this is for because we had loads. But what we were performing for, we had to perform it in front of our music teachers. And one of our music teachers said, you need to give the audience time to experience what you want them to experience. And you have to give the audience time to listen and to sit. You need to have musical space. You need it. Like your brain needs it. She was explaining the neuroscience of music, which I'm also going to do an episode on. I have so many ideas. I'm really into inspiration. But you need to create and construct space. If not, we can't enjoy the magic you're creating. And I know there is a temptation to want to show how skilled you are, but there is a skill in taking time and offering, patience and offering things to give to your listener for them to turn over in their head before they move on to something else. And it's something that I've tried to carry in music in general. I'm like, oh, space. That's true. Like space. And that concept changed the way I interact with how I make music and how I play music, and how I go about performing songs whenever I do perform. But that is a concept that I think carries, and but our brains are just not wired for space anymore. Nobody makes albums anymore.
Female genius.
I do want to clarify that I think art and the consumerism of products and makeup products and buying loads of shoes and clothes, I think it's slightly different, and they come with slightly different societal pressures driving both. Okay. And I just wanted to give that consumerism background because I do think there are related lines of thinking, but I don't think they're 100% in sync. I just wanted to establish that. Okay. But when I often think about things like art and music and stories and cinema, right, I often think of having way too many options of things to consume, and that they occupy the same brain space. So we often get overloaded. Streaming services have afforded us the luxury of having thousands of options of movies and TV shows and music and books and art to see and consume just at our fingertips. There are so many. I know this is not a solitary experience of having sat down to say, okay, I'm going to have a cozy night in and I'm going to watch a cutesy rom-com, and you spent 45 minutes just trying to find one film you're going to watch. I remember me and my friends, we would do movie nights quite often. And whenever we would do movie nights, one of the biggest arguments we would have would be what to watch. We would spend an hour trying to figure out what to watch, to the point where we resulted in having this thing where everybody has to bring 2 movies before they come, and then we put 2 movies into a bowl, and then somebody picks out 1 movie and then 2 movies, and then that's that. That was just the only way we could do that. Or if we would just be like, but what about this one? Oh, I've watched that. Oh, maybe what about this one? And so I think having so many of those things, and it's the same for music. Back in the day, if you really think about it, you would have to when I mean back in the day, I mean 1980s. Okay, I wasn't born then, but I can imagine that if you wanted to listen to a song, you would turn on the radio, and whatever was on the radio is what you were listening to. Or you could go to the music store, save up, or buy an album. But then again, you had that one album. You can't buy thousands of albums unless you have to build a collection of albums. And so you have to go take the time. Vinyl. I recently got a vinyl player. Vinyls are so hard, so hard to navigate, by the way. I'm really scared I've scratched my vinyl, and I haven't touched it since. And it was a gift. But my dad was showing me, he was like, it's so hard to skip a song. So you're kind of forced to really consume and listen to the vinyl. Rather than on Spotify, you can listen to whatever. You can stop one song and switch and switch and switch and switch and switch and switch. And I think it's amazing to have so many options, giving us the opportunity to consume things that we might not have ever had the opportunity to come over. The fact that I'm watching a K-drama, it's amazing. So this is not me demonizing it completely, but I'm just I'm just illustrating the paradox that we have here. Okay. We also have recommendation after recommendation on social media. You go on and somebody says, you need to watch this show. You need to read this book. Sometimes I love book talk, and I love, it feels like my community because I am a bookworm. And so having my For You page be a bunch of bookworms is phenomenal, but it is also recommendation overload where my TBR list it's it's longer than my life. Like my entire lifespan. It's so fucking long because I'm getting so many books and somebody says, oh, I need to read this, or I need to read this. And it kind of makes me a little bit trigger happy and anxious. So I'm like trying to speed run a book because I have another book in the back of my mind that I need to read. And my friend's like, you need to read this. And I'm like, oh. And I just bought this book that I really wanted to read the other day. And, you get a little bit overwhelmed. And I've already spoken about doing two things at once, okay? And I think this also, other than it just being the way you consume art, I think it has a knock-on effect on the way in which art is created as well. So there was this really concerning news article, or it was a leak, where it was revealed that a lot of the Netflix higher-ups were encouraging filmmakers for Netflix to make things obvious and on the nose because we need to make shows and movies for people in mind that are on their phones. So you need to have things where they repeat a lot of obvious things all the time because somebody might be on their phone and miss it, and it might interrupt their quote unquote viewing experience. Or you would have people describing, and look at the green beach. The beach is green, guys. Oh my God, I can't believe the beach is green, because they have in mind that somebody is on their phone and not actually consuming the screen. That is changing the way art is being made. And that is scary. It feels very Brave New Worldian. Okay. Like it's like over convenience to the point where they're making it even more convenient for you to follow a storyline in the expense of creating truly detailed stories and beautiful landscapes and like amazing storytelling in things that aren't just obvious and on the nose. In addition to this, I think this all kind of bubbles up and contributes to this notion of the paradox of choice. We have so much choice, and some of the choice is easy and accessible and yummy, but gross for us. It's like McDonald's versus going like at home, making a very nice homemade burger with like fresh meat and fresh salad, vegan meat if you're veggie. For you, Simran, I added that for you. And all of these different things, and munching on the burger, and then like one is really, really good for you, but it takes longer to make and it might not be as satisfying, as easy as like a McDonald's burger, as junk food for you. You know what I mean? All of those different things. And I honestly think we can talk a little bit about the paradox of choice. And I've spoken about this on the what episode? It was a situationship episode, and the why Gen Z aren't having sex anymore episode. I remember those were the two episodes. I spoke about the paradox of choice, but I do think it applies here as well. And so I'm just going to reiterate it for those who haven't watched those episodes. I really like those episodes, so go back and watch those. So the paradox of choice is experiment, I think was a Stanford experiment done where they had two donut stands. One donut stand only sold 3 donuts, let's say glazed, strawberry, chocolate. And there was another donut stand which had 20 options or so. People that went to the donut stand with 3 options were more likely to pick something and were a lot happier with what they picked, okay? They were a lot more satisfied afterwards. They didn't really leave thinking, I should have got the strawberry or the chocolate one. They more likely bought one and they were happy with what they bought. However, all of those that went to the donut stand with 20 options, number one, were overwhelmed with choice. They were more likely to not make a decision just because they weren't sure of what decision to make. They kept ping-ponging between different decisions that they felt so overwhelmed that they decided to not make a decision at all. But in addition to this, those that did end up picking a donut left a little dissatisfied with their choice, thinking that they would probably be a lot more happier with another different option. And this could potentially apply to the consumption of art. Okay, I was going to say consummation of art. To the consumption of art. In the sense that you watch a movie and you think, wow, that movie was great, but what if we had watched this one? Tomorrow I'm going to watch this, and all of these different things. And we're always thinking about what if the grass was greener on the other side, hoping to live 25 different realities into one. And I do think that this affects our way of consuming art.
Female genius.
So, in addition to the paradox of choice, there are other theories that modern philosophers and sociologists have started to put forward to the table as more and more people are recognizing the concern that relates to this. Right. French philosopher Jean Baudrillard argues that whole consumerism state, including products as well as art, has created this entirely new state of reality known as hyperreality, where the simulated image becomes more real than the reality itself. Human creation shifts to managing and consuming these signs in hyperreality rather than experiencing these sides. And the artist's creation becomes absorbed into this, becoming a data piece in your playlist or a momentary fleeting cultural symbol in, like, say, a TikTok meme. And in the sense that we are, again, in conjunction to aesthetic consumerism, we've created this new form of reality that you're doing things, let's say, for the simulated image rather than the real life experience of itself. I'm watching this or going to this concert not to experience music, but to take really cool pictures and post it so that people know that I gone to a concert. The idea of going to a concert and not taking a single picture aghasts people, not because they want to keep memories, but because how can I go to a concert and not post it on social media? And that is something I think, as well as aesthetic consumerism, as well as the paradox of choice, and probably more things than I have time to mention in this episode, contribute to the way and the failure in which we consume art. So I think the answer doesn't necessarily lie in, abandoning all of these systems in general, jumping off a bridge and not consuming social media. But I think it lies in intentionally constructing spaces for yourself and moments where you can intentionally begin to consume art. In the same way, in music, my music teacher told me you need to intentionally create space within the piece that you're creating for the listener to be able to digest the piece that you were creating. You need to actively create space within yourself and around yourself to allow yourself to intentionally consume art and here and then. And I'm going to suggest a couple things that I have started doing. Creating space to intentionally consume art could be picking an album a week that you are going to dedicate your time to listening to. Not to say that's the only album you listen to, but maybe for one day you say, okay, on this walk, rather than listening to a podcast, rather than calling my friends, rather than having my like playlist on shuffle, I'm going to listen to this one album of this artist that's been in the back of my ride. I recently started doing this, and this week it's Blood Orange's Coastal Grooves. And I picked it because I was obsessed with Champagne Coast when it went viral on TikTok. And I really, really, really like, guys, the song, I can't articulate. I need to learn how to better articulate how music makes me feel. But the parts of it feels spiritual, to be honest. It felt so articulate to different things I was experiencing. And I loved Champagne Coast. But I'd never listened to any other things by Blood Oranges, apart from You're Just Not Good Enough, because it was the intro to every early 2010s coming of age movie ever. It made its appearance. So I thought, okay, I'm going to listen to Coastal Grooves, and the whole thing I create is I listen to this album twice in the week. And then I spend time thinking about the song lyrics. Spend time thinking about my favorite moments of it. And then I write maybe a really short paragraph, literally 3 or 4 sentences about the things I love the album. I don't rate it, not for like a rating aesthetic scale. It's just more to see, how did I make the album feel? Why did I like it? What kind of sounds carried forth? Were there particular chords and melodies that struck out to me? Was there particular memories that were brought to surface? It could be anything, because different albums are going to make you feel different things and ponder on different things. But that's something I intentionally started begin to consume music a little bit more meaningfully. And I think that's one suggestion. If you are into movies, it could be, I'm going to watch a movie a week, and I'm going to pick one movie and I'm going to really get into it. I could watch the interviews of the director. I can understand history and like all of these different things, but really allowing yourself to like lock in, your phone on the other side of the room, turn it off, watch that movie and really, really watch that movie, and then have a small space after you've watched the movie to reflect on what you watched. And it doesn't have to be, again, sweeping long essays and paragraphs. It could just be, I watched Inside Out 2, and you know what? I really recognize, I thought this character was hilarious, loved it, thought it was really funny. And I also really thought that, the way they presented anxiety, I really liked the way that metaphor that they used. That's kind of how my anxiety has always felt. And it could be left there. But again, you are intentionally constructing places for you to listen, watch, consume the art, but then also reflect on how that has impacted you in their life. There are different things as well, such as book journaling, something that I have recently started doing. I eat books. That's what my dad says. He used to say that a lot when I was younger, that she just swallows books whole. Okay, like I will sit with a book, and if a book, it like has my attention, like during summer, or when I was like underemployed, like so unemployed, I just remember I would eat like book after book after book after a book. And I remember telling my friend, I'm a little bit exhausted of reading. And it wasn't even because my brain is exhausted. I think I just had like, I was eating these books, but I wasn't reflecting and thinking about the things that I had read. And I just had all of these things and these opinions floating. And I think it kind of started to seep in my real life and the way I would feel in real life and the way I would act, because I didn't have an outlet to consume those things. So I would read a really, really sad book and then feel sad, or carry an ideology from a book and not really think through how I would want that in my life, or why I feel that way, or what particular history I wanted to look into. But I just remember I just had things floating around in my brain. And I made a book journal. I bought a book journal because when I buy something, it becomes permanent. Okay, I bought a book journal. And I created 4 questions to ask myself. If you want, I'll post it on social media afterwards, for every time I read a book. And then I would just ask myself, and then I just started going like, okay, this is why I think the four questions off the top of my head was, okay, like which character do you think did you feel most connected to, and which character did you feel least connected to? So that's a question that allows you to reflect on yourself and how the characters made you feel as a reader. This is for fiction books, by the way. And then you have what is your favorite quote from the book, or what was a moment from the book that stood out the most. If you could ask the author one question, what would it be and why? And I think there was a fourth. There was, I think it's like, if you could, yeah, like, is there a particular, like, what message do you think this book is trying to communicate about the world? And I remember I read a romance book and then I book journaled it, and at first I was like, how am I going to book journal this like TikTok romance about like a murder challenge? And then I was like, wait, but no, I found this character really interesting, and I found her relationship with her sister very interesting, and I recognized it, and I was reflecting it to my relationship about the sister, and then I recognized actually what they were trying to tell the world a little bit through this book, and in this really twisted, weird way in fantasy, is that sometimes you can be accepted by who you love, and it's not about hiding different parts of yourself. It's like letting those parts of self come to light and attracting people that are willing to accept those parts of yourself. And it's really a commentary on like this. And I was like, wait, there is really something to say about everything. And again, it only came, and I only realized this because I constructed that intentional space while book journaling. Movie critiquing, keeping a journal or review of shows and movies, a part of a book club, a cinema club, a movie club, a music club. Have a space where you and your friends pick an album and you guys all listen to it and discuss it. There's something to be said about community and having accountability to force you to begin to reflect on things. By creating these spaces don't have to be experienced alone. I have my comic book club on TikTok, which I've loved, and it's allowed me to start reading and going through comics that before I ate, I was like, through my mouth quickly, moving on to the next one. But it's allowed me to sit and digest so I can have meaningful conversations and bring meaningful discussions on DC Comics forward. If you guys would like to join, the link is in the bio. We talk on Discord, and we're doing currently right now a beginner's guide. So I'm giving, like, if you're brand spanking new to the world of DC, this is the perfect part to like set you up and expose you to the most part of the universe. So by the time we've done with like this run, you are just in the right place to kind of go anywhere you want. And then I think after that, I'm going to be doing like specific deep dives into specific characters arcs, or I think I might do like a Women of DC run. I don't know. I'm really having fun. Okay. Walk around art museum in silence, reading each plaque, noting down your favorite paintings, and then to go away and then look into maybe your famous paintings and what those means to you. Watch a TV show on the other side of the room. Again, it's all about intentionally creating space for yourself to consume all of this art.
Female genius.
The junk foodification of art is quite dangerous in the long term, and for many reasons, you know, for your brain health, I will always go and bang on about it. The more I study neuroscience, the more I understand that these things that might seem simple and slightly more enjoyable or slightly more difficult for us are amazing for our brains and our health. But also, I also think less from like, okay, this is just good for you and it's great for your attention span and your dopamine. I also think I can think about it from the point of life is more beautiful when sometimes you like take your time. You know, those moments in a concert where you kind of lose a sense of the outside world. Everybody's singing the same song. You and the guitarist are experiencing and feeling the chords at the same time. You're there with your friend and like you're singing and you're jumping and you're smiling and you're screaming at song. Your phone is not in your hand and you're truly vulnerable and experiencing that moment with thousands of other people. There are very few experiences in life that allow you to do so. You know, that moment when you're reading a comic and a book and like time just kind of disappears and you're thrown into this world, and when you come back at it, you kind of, the world feels slightly shifted and different after you've read a really life-changing book or you've watched a really life-changing movie. You walk out of the cinema and the air feels different, or you ponder things different, or you look at people different, or you think about how you consider what your life might look like afterwards different. Okay, those feelings where your heart is erasing and you fully align yourself with this empathetic state of understanding another person's world experience, a lens and worldview. And nothing in the world can allow you to do that in the same way that art can. And it's beautiful and it's intentional that we've been given this amazing gift to be able to consume stories like that and people's lives like that. And I worry for people's empathy, and I don't think we should take for granted this experience of being able to consume art. So I beg of you to be able to construct spaces for you to consume people's art meaningfully in a way that matters, you know? And if we do not craft spaces where we can appreciate, critique, discuss, and turn over art within ourselves, our society that is going towards completely only caring about how you look and completely caring about what you own and how much you own, right? I fear for the type of humans we will create without the conscious consumption of art, okay? But nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed this episode. It is a little bit different, but as always, geniuses, my only goal is to bring interesting conversations with interesting thought processes to this podcast. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next time on the Female Genius podcast. Bye-bye!
Female genius.